Welcome to Pioneers, the show where we explore the intersection between humanity and AI. I'm your host, Ankar Patel. Over the last 10 years, I've built 3 AI startups, written 2 books about the subject, and I run a weekly AI newsletter. I also regularly teach and speak about the topic at conferences. This technology has grown faster than I think any of us could have imagined, and it's making us ask really important questions, such as how ethical is AI? What will this technology look like in a few years, let alone a few months? And most importantly, does it have the power to truly change the world? And what does it mean for you? On this show, I'll be interviewing the founders, operators, and pioneers that are introducing AI into their companies and industries. We'll be asking them the really heavy-hitting questions that make them dig deep into the core of what we do. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Today, I want to welcome our guest, Byron Matthews, the CEO of Talent Inc. Talent has been a client of Multimodal for the last several months. We've got into some really interesting AI work together. But to start off with, Byron, could you maybe just go through your origin story, how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here, so I certainly appreciate that. So as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Talent Inc., but really my journey here, my entire career have been in B2B and primarily go-to-market, kind of large-scale Salesforce type projects and work. Talent was a kind of a new venture for me in terms of getting in the consumer space. But before this, I was CEO of a company called Miller Heiman, which we just helped people sell better. So kind of a sales performance business, sold that business to Korn Ferry. And prior to that, just really head of sales at Aflac, head of sales at Mercer, Accenture for 11 years, all around sales work. But really the catalyst for me here was what I loved about Miller Heiman was helping people sell and make more money. I mean, that was really just an awesome part of the journey there. And so when I sold the business to Korn Ferry, I wanted to do something in that spirit of just kind of helping people. And when Talent came along, which is at its core is a career services business, helping people succeed in their career, find new jobs, it was super inspiring. And between that and really getting into the direct-to-consumer space was a new challenge for me. And that's really what kind of drove me to the next step with Talent.
I think that's great, Byron. And I think what's really interesting is that you have an extensive sales background. And for a lot of people that come from a non-technical background, like marketing or sales, AI can be very daunting because it is at its core very deeply technical. But I think you've done a great job of getting up to speed on where AI could be impactful and then incorporating that into your business. So maybe high level, let's just talk about how you approached AI, how you've been able to get up to speed and ultimately bring that to Talent.
So that's a good question. I mean, I think from my perspective, we're a pretty fast growing business. So we're doing really well. We're growing. We're acquiring a lot of businesses. We have a lot of various different brands underneath the Talent Inc. Talent Inc. is kind of a holding company, got a ton of different brands underneath it. And as I really thought about bringing everything together and adding value to our clients and our customers, AI in the background was just starting to get so much noise. Like people were like talking about it, and it felt. And by the way, we were using kind of 2 AI models inside of our business for a while. And it, as a leadership team, we kind of got together and we just had this offsite session where we just focused on what are some things that we should be thinking about related to AI, and honestly, what are some of the things we don't understand about it. And that last part is really what got us more educated and pushed our thinking. And we really looked at it. I'm sure a lot of businesses look at it the same way. There's 2 very stark contrasts. There's how it can truly, genuinely increase the production of your business, whether that's on the revenue side or efficiency on cost. And then there's the threat part of like, honestly, what could it mean in terms of the downside? And so when we did that mapping and kind of looked at the whole thing, it was obvious that the only way this was going to be a net add is if we leaned in really hard. And we, immediately jumped on the efficiencies piece, which are pretty easy. And then really thought creatively and as most creatively as possible around what it could mean on the product side. How can this really amplify our impact to our customers? And what are some of the things we should be pioneers around? Like, what are the things we should be first? and we just leaned in. And so as I kind of think back now 6 to 8 months since we've started that, and given kind of the stuff we've already had, I could not be happier with where we are right now. I mean, it's by far a net positive for us. And I don't see that journey really slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah. No, I love the way you phrased it because I think there are two ways to think of AI. It's introducing operational efficiency, which in many cases is a low hanging fruit. It's
Yeah.
identifying areas that a lot of people are involved where technology can add efficiency and productivity. But the other one is very beautiful, which is it enables new product capabilities, new features that weren't even possible before AI. And that becomes truly revenue generating. It becomes, it opens up opportunities, right? And I think many of the applications that we haven't even seen will come about to light only as people start really getting involved with AI, right? So like there's a lot of uncertainty there, but that's where potentially maybe even the bigger opportunity is. But let's talk about the first piece, the operational efficiency, because it seems like it's the low hanging fruit, particularly for businesses. And how did you go about the calculus essentially of or the calculations really go through and say, these are the areas where we think there's operational efficiency to be had and AI
Yeah.
would be right for it?
I mean, for us, that was really simple stuff. I mean, I don't want to, over engineer this. I mean, it was one of these things where the kind of team got together. Take marketing, for example. I mean, I'm sure tons of people are thinking about this. For us, it became a reality really quickly. We have a huge content team. I mean, we are, a big part of the lead machine underneath our businesses is SEO. And with that is content. And so we have a pretty significant apparatus around all that. And really quickly, it was easy to be able to kind of bring together both the human touch as well as AI to not only increase the amount, but just the innovation around the content, the type of content, and the speed in which we were getting it out. And we did all of that cheaper. It doesn't mean that we're outsourced 100%. So to be clear, it's not like we just use AI to just generate our content. That's not what we do. But we use it in combination with our writers, and we're just getting higher quality, quicker, more output. And they have a whole process now that we were able to cut costs 35% within 2 months, 3 months. And that for us was a pretty big number, and it was really, really meaningful. So that is just the easiest example that I can give. Now, we've got more unique things within our team. So, like, for example, we write a couple 100,000 resumes for people, probably even more than that. But let's just say a couple 100,000 resumes a year, where historically, people would give us their resume, we would do a review. Oh, by the way, we use AI for that. We have expert writers kind of on top of that also look at those reviews. Then they come in, we try to convert them to, hey, well, why don't we write it for you? And we pride ourselves having expert writers that we train that have been with us for a very, very long time that write these resumes. But it takes time. I mean, that was it's about, I'm plus or minus, like, call it 15 minutes, but call it 3.5 hours to write a resume. And our experts would kind of go through it back and forth with the customer. Well, now using AI, we give the writers a jumpstart. So we can actually provide them a resume from somebody who's given it to us, put it through our model, and it gives them a head start around what that resume, based on what the objectives of those individuals. And it streamlines the time from 3.5 hours to 45 minutes. Now, the key thing, and this is like really, really material, is it's a combination of technology and human performance. And so what's ended up happening is our NPS scores have been going up. And we've been doing some things with technology over the last kind of year. And the more we put in with technology to augment our writers, the quality is actually going up. So if we were to stop and just use the technology, I think our quality would go down. But because we're able to kind of wrap some technology and AI around our expert writers, we're getting way more efficient with higher quality. So that's a really, really, really material part of our business. And so being able to go from 3.5 hours to 45 minutes while quality goes up, it's, unbelievable. And I mean, just to kind of cut through how we would do that. Let's say we have 100 writers, and now let's say we need 30 writers. Well, we take the top 30. So our best writers are now touching all of our customers' resumes. And it's outrageous in terms of the quality now that we're able to do. And AI gets us 75 to 80% there. And then the writers really kind of take it to the next level.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the fear that many people have is that AI is just going to replace humans entirely,
Yeah.
and that's not true. Especially for the people that are most talented, have the most domain expertise, they get empowered by AI, and it enables them to be superhuman at what they do. So, as you said, the very best, it enables them to do really great work. How are you thinking about the impact it has on the labor, right? The talent that's there.
Yeah.
So what happens to the 70 that aren't in the top 30? How do you think about basically adjustment to the labor market or maybe additional
Yeah.
roles within your company?
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. So I actually want to make one other point, and then I want to address that one.
Hmm.
The point about how people think of it as, oh, it's just the technology. Here's one really interesting thing. We review resumes for free. So people give us a resume, we review it for free. We've actually seen a decrease in quality of resumes that we've been seeing since I'm just going to use ChatGPT or whatever people are using,
Sure.
because what's happening is the resumes that we're getting, people, we can tell they're not right. It's not people actually writing them.
Mhm.
It's hey, I'm using chat to write my resume, and here it is, and you guys review it, and actually quality is going down when it's only technology. So that's just kind of one side thing that we're
Yeah.
seeing as a interesting trend of actual quality going down when people we think are just using technology. So that's kind of one point. Around the people, listen, I mean, there's a lot of people have different opinions on this,
Mhm.
clearly. There's no doubt that with the augmentation of AI around organizational processes, I gave a couple, without doubt will reduce labor needs specifically in those business processes. That's
Yeah.
fact. However, there are other needs in terms of, like, if you think about how we're training some of these models, like, for
Mhm.
example, some of these people, some of our writers have now moved to coaching, and we're using coaching to train some of our models, or we're using coaching to do more of the human part of our services. So people are just finding other areas to move into, whether they are getting some additional skilling, reskilling,
Yeah.
retooling kind of stuff, or they're just able to kind of have mobility around various different parts of the organization. So we've actually found ways to leverage people in different models, but there's just no question that in certain business processes there will be less labor needs.
Yeah.
That's not a secret.
Yeah, and that's true of every technological inflection point, right?
Yeah,
And people have adjusted. It's created newer opportunities that didn't
for sure.
exist before, and we're seeing that on the modeling side. So to train really the very best models, you need humans that can provide feedback and consistently provide feedback. So it helps the
Yeah,
model realign. Behind every OpenAI model release, there is hundreds of thousands of people that are providing feedback to those models at scale to get that
yeah,
alignment. Same thing happens here. It's a really interesting finding that you're seeing the resume quality decrease with the advent of new technology. Because on the outside looking in, it feels like all of a sudden everyone can write a resume using ChatGPT, which would be a threat to your core
mm,
business. But it's actually, you're saying it's the opposite because too many people are relying on it and the
yeah,
quality is just not there.
yeah. And again, I don't know where it'll be long term, and I don't. It's hard to project that necessarily, but
Yeah.
what I know is that, I mean, I'm drawing a couple of conclusions. I think people are leveraging some AI or some technology to create their resumes where maybe a year or 2 years ago they weren't. Well, okay, let's agree that that's probably true. Well, at the same time, the quality we're seeing is lower
Mhm.
and coming in, and we're getting. I mean, this isn't like 10,000 resumes a month. I mean, we're talking about 800,000 a month. And so it's pretty obvious that if you don't know how to interact with the technology and with AI, and you don't know the questions to ask or the prompts and the data to provide as an input and the back and forth it takes, and if
Yeah.
you're just kind of winging it, you're going to get garbage in, garbage out. And I just think that that's happening in a lot of cases. And so again, the one data point we'll use on the resume side, that's clearly what we're seeing, which is a good opportunity for us to then layer in, hey, listen, let us help you either give you some do-it-yourself tools that leverages AI that actually guides you through that process,
Mm-hmm.
which is important, helps you ask the right questions, asks for the right input, gives you the right template, all that kind of stuff. Or we'll help do it for you in a combination of humans, experts, really leaning in, that also leverage technology. So for us, again, on the net, it's a opportunity for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you've built this model or this solution as a whole where it abstracts away the complexity. So the user doesn't need to figure out what data to provide, what prompts to provide, how to go and like make the model like perform magic. You're abstracting that away. So it's a much better user experience. And then they have the option of basically self-serving themselves. So basically using the output as a starting point, or they get to basically tap into the human expert writers you have that can
That's right.
give them a very polished final product. So that completely makes sense. As you think about the moat, right, the defensibility of your business, where does that come from? Is that the data, the models, the
Yeah.
entire solution?
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing. I mean, this is where you got into where we were talking about earlier around, is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? I can't yet wrap my head around the threat part because as I get more and more and more into this, I realize it's not turnkey. I mean, how you train the model, the data that you actually have, the insights your business has around what good looks like as a story related to a certain job, like that's a really important
Yeah,
piece of information.
yeah,
And being able to put that in your own model, to train models based on what a senior level person sounds like versus an entry level person, what a specific industry might sound like versus another industry, and then the function and the job, right? So if you think about level of seniority, the industry, and the actual job, the combination of those three things matter. Well, what does it take to learn those things? Data, training, time. And so if you think about us writing 20, 30,000 resumes a month, where technology helps create the beginning, the human expert finishes it, you give it back to the model to it then learn, and you do that 20,000 times, you do that for industries, for jobs, like that's a moat. Like that's, no one's going to just whip that up. And so our ability to tell a unique story that's specific to somebody's need all day long, our models will ultimately beat out anything that's publicly available or certain what anyone else is trying to build. So I look at it as an advantage. Like without that, again, it's an operational mess. So you got to have thousands and thousands of writers. You got to make sure you get the right writer with the right industry, with the right,
yeah.
you miss on that sometimes because that's like an operational, trick. So this is just really, really good for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the better data you have, the better the model becomes, which means that the better the starting point is versus like a
Mhm.
closed source model like OpenAI's model. And then because you have everything else that you bring to the table, including human expert writers and the other adjacent services, you start building a defensibility through that, through the overall offering.
Yeah.
And I do think this is an area where basically it's the winner starts getting stronger over time, right? The strong get stronger because they have a flywheel loop of getting great data, which makes the model better, which means they get more users, which means they get more data, which makes the model better, right? And so it gets perpetually more performant over time versus say like an open AI model.
Yeah, and I think the differentiation is in two things. So it's that flywheel you're talking about, which is key. If you have the right process that has the data and the learning, and that just keeps going and building on its own. Clearly, that's one. But the second piece is, and if you use that model in the context of experts, of expertise, and if you're able to do that, so you have the expertise plus the model, I mean, that is so defensible.
Yeah.
So I think it's more than just the technology. It's how you use it in the context of expertise of
Yeah.
what your business brings, makes it the combination of those two things really unique.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. But how do you ensure that resumes don't all get saturated and don't look identical and similar to each other when all of them are being generated perhaps by the same AI model?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's it's the context of what someone's trying to achieve that puts it into a unique spot. So when we get or when we do something for somebody, whether it's to do it yourself or we're doing it for them, um, there's questions we ask. We need to understand what you're really trying to achieve. We try to understand that person and what story are they trying to tell. That context makes the difference. So again, there's kind of those three dimensions. Are you entry level? Like what level are you? Expertise, what industry, and then what function are you trying, like what job are you trying to get? That plus the what are you actually trying to achieve? Like what is your career goals next? And then we bring that into what is then the resume. There's no way that would ever be duplicated or get watered down or anything, because that extra goal that, what am I trying to achieve, creates kind of the voice inside of the resume. And it's not just resume. It could be in a cover letter. It could be in your LinkedIn profile. It could be in your interview and how you talk about yourself. So it's about all ways you brand and tell your story, where that kind of comes out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's right. It's dialed in for what they're trying to do, given the industry and given the seniority that they have. Um, on the other side, how do you make sure that the writers and the team that you have stay up to date with learning how to use AI tools, learning how the new models work? What's that learning curve look like for them?
Well, honestly, you guys have been helping us with that. I think, we had, when we started this whole journey, we again had two models that were kind of baked into the business in terms of our resume critique and our interview prep in terms of building custom resumes on the fly using AI to kind of generate the right questions. Those were kind of around, and we had some limited expertise around understanding those models and how to evolve those models. But as we really leaned in to, okay, let's really get after this and let's really put AI in the forefront of our product and the experts around our product, we needed help. Obviously, I think the partnership that we've had has been pretty clear around that, and you guys helping us navigate various methods to get to our end state, from starting with an open AI model to get us going to really understanding how to really get the inputs and the outputs and the prompts and making sure that we've got the right kind of process around this working, to then building our own models so that we can take advantage of the uniqueness. I think, and which models to start with. You guys have been instrumental in kind of helping us learn, but ultimately those are strengths we are building internally, is to begin to understand these trade-offs and why we would do one thing over the other and how to get started on these projects, so they don't feel daunting, frankly.
Yep.
That's been a learning process that we've been going down with you guys. But I think we've been together now, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And I think it's pretty clear that the team is getting up to speed. And I think over the next few months, we'll be in a position to really kind of start making some of our own decisions in some of these things.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of business leaders, what they struggle with is they know AI is the next thing, right? I think they don't deny it. They understand that. The challenge is which use case to start with, which feels like you did that calculation by meeting with the larger team, but then it's time to impact, time to ROI, right? I think because it is a material expense, internal resources, potentially external resources. You're paying for different models, third-party models. Let's say you're setting up different compute infrastructure. So the amount of time and dollar investment is substantial. How are you thinking about the ROI? Have you started to see some of that? What does that path look like?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple different buckets. For me, as I thought about the investments, there's obviously being very responsible and understanding, okay, so what is the return? What is the time? What is it? All that kind of stuff. And some it's easier than others. Like some it's obvious, like the resume writing. That's a math equation. It's really simple. We know how long it takes and what it costs to write a resume today or before. And we think the efficiency can get us to here. And that saves us this. And this is how much we're going to put into it. And here's the ROI, like really simple math. That was easy. We have 5 ongoing projects, like significant model development projects going on right now. 2 are already in production right now. So we'll have 7 models by the time this whole thing's done. But more, I would say 3 of the ones that are going on right now are exactly what I'm talking about, which is it's very clear cut to me. I understand the ROI. We've done the math. It's clear. But we made a decision on 2 to really just give it a shot, meaning this is something we think can be a game changer for the industry, for the business, for people related to career services. I don't know yet how exactly it's going to take off. I don't know how it will connect to other parts of our products and pull in services yet. I don't quite know. But I know that it's got a really high potential. We did some survey work with our customers around what sort of things would you like to see? And some of their answers, like for example, coaching, it costs money. Like, okay, sure, but here's a couple $100 for a session. That's not what they were talking about. So how do you really get to an AI model that is really relevant in terms of its ability to add value, while still pulling in services at the right time? I'm not sure how that's going to work out yet. I mean, we're in the process of kind of thinking through that together, but that's okay for me. Like for me, it's like if I could take it a flyer, make a couple big bets on a few of these, as long as I know that these 3 are well in the ROI kind of view, I'm in good shape. And I think it's right for our business to make some of those bets.
Yeah, I love that because I think you've identified areas where there's more clear ROI because it's like a very clear cut workflow with volume, and you're automating it, you're creating efficiency. And that gives you more confidence than to take bigger open-ended bets saying, well, what if we do AI in this area, another area? The ROI is less clear cut, but because you've seen success from AI in a couple of areas, you're able to kind of go and take a leap of faith in some ways into other builds. I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I think that's a really good blueprint for other business leaders to draw upon. How do you think about cannibalization of the business? So one of the worries based on what you're describing is you have a self-serve product for resume writing, and then you have the human expert writers. You have human coaching and potentially AI coaching. And how do you think about, well, is AI going to cannibalize some of the existing business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think of it like that. I think of it as just helping people, and whether they prefer to do it themselves or they prefer support is really what it's more about, versus I have a higher margin on this or versus that. Because I think that the more we help, the more customers we end up having, and the longer they're going to stay with us. Whether that's, let me do a one-time transaction because I need you to help me, versus I'm going to engage with you in a do-it-yourself on a subscription model. I don't honestly think of it as, well, I want to push more over here than over here. I just want more customers. I just want to satisfy more people. And then they'll stay longer, they'll use us longer. Whether it's all do-it-yourself, that would be great. I mean, I have no problem with that. I understand that it's a lower priced product, but if you're getting what you need in terms of being able to tell your story, that's perfectly fine. Because ultimately there might be a time down the road where you do need that help. I'd rather have that option than only having a transaction option where I might turn off so many people because they don't want to pay that one-time, higher price product. So I think it's just about impacting more people, giving them more options and more flexibility for their needs. I don't think there's a cannibalization issue whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear cut that when used well, AI is going to do such great good for candidates because now they're getting better resumes, which means that they'll find the right job faster. They find their dream job faster, 100%. and then they just they're better as candidates in the labor market, right? Using all the products that you have as a business. How do you think about breaking the episodic cycle that typically exists with perhaps products like yours, where candidates come to you when they're looking for a job search to write a resume, but then when they're in a job, they may not need your products anymore for that, at least for that duration?
Well, that is really important in terms of what we're trying to solve for. I mean, we think about our value proposition as three different kind of big, broader use cases. I'm needing to find a job. I want to excel in my job, and I'm kind of looking for a change in my career. It's those last 2 that we're really leaning in now to try to get right. And it's super exciting. I mean, this is where kind of data and some of the models we're contemplating even getting into next year could really make a difference. If you think about, I mean, just think about this for 1 second. People in their jobs, they go to they have an annual review where at the end of the year they're told their raise, they get told how good they're doing, and maybe if they're in line for a promotion. And it's just kind of a process. And the
Yeah.
bigger the organization, the more structured they are in this thing. Where some large organizations come with data that says, hey, we're going to give you this percent of raise, and this is why, and blah 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 blah. Well, employees walk into that stuff completely blind. I mean, like whatever happens, happens. They don't come in with a point of view that says, well, wait a minute, I'm paid at the 50th percentile. But wait a minute, people at my level, in my experience, are actually a level higher. And well, wait a minute, I've got skills that mean they don't come ready to battle for yourself. They just kind of take whatever that company says. So this idea of empowering people with data and insights is really where we're trying to take this and where we're taking our product to get people to just think about this as a resource, no matter where they are in their journey. Mm-hmm. Now, AI is a massive, massive role to play related to learning about people's progression. So really training a model around, okay, I've got this many years experience. I've got these skills. I've got this interest. I'm built this way in terms of my DNA. And I have this. These are the typical paths people like me actually take. And here's the skill progression and the titles and the various different salary and all the different things. Being really, really understanding that, which would obviously be very dynamic view, is important. And so being able to provide that data to people is the next step for us in a very proactive, very action-oriented way that I think could be a game changer if people really leverage that stuff. And so that's really how and where we're taking the business.
And I think two questions naturally come from that, because I think there's been a lot of interest in the space that you're talking about, which is can you empower candidates with data so they could go and negotiate their comp better or their equity package better? And you see success from companies like Pave, right, where they're benchmarking candidates. They're helping employers figure out what to dole out in terms of comp and equity. And then on the other side, candidates get some perspective, right? So I think that's amazing. It seems like the side of the market that you lean towards is the candidate side, but what about the employer side potentially? I think about human resources and job descriptions that they have for open positions. What should they have in their JD? How should they pay their people so they're competitive in the market? Do you have a plan for that at all?
So here's the deal. I kind of grew up in that space a little bit. I spent a lot of time at Mercer, had a stint at Korn Ferry. There are large businesses with tons of data and tons of infrastructure, a very crowded market trying to help employers, whether that's on the data side, technology, HCM systems, like all that stuff. Like that's all well thought about. What is underappreciated is empowering the employee, is getting them the data. No one's obsessed with that. Everyone's obsessed with the employer. And so honestly, I'm going to let all these other companies focus on the employer. For me, it's about the people. It's about the employees, the candidates, and really obsessing about them. Even big job boards, they all make their money from employers. And candidates are kind of a secondary thought. Everything we want to do is about the people and giving them the right data and being completely, and this is the most important thing, completely unbiased. I don't want to be biased in terms of data I show them because I'm being paid by an employer. I don't want to show them a job because if they were to click on that job, we get paid. It's not what we want to do. We want to be completely unbiased. And when you are completely unbiased and solely focused on the candidate, the amount of opportunity right now from where we are today to what's possible is a massive amount of space to take. And that's what we're really, really obsessed in doing.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal answer, because you want to stay in your lane. You want to serve the market where there's a bigger opportunity. And I think it truly does break the episodic mold, which is candidates need you throughout their career, even especially when they're working for an employer as they're working to get the next raise, understanding what it takes and basically what they should be asking for, right? Because they're armed with good data. What keeps you up at night when it comes to AI, maybe in terms of threats or security issues? I'm just curious, is there anything that is in particular worries you about where AI is today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, um, I mean, when we talked about threats, when we really kind of mapped this whole thing out, I mean, clearly some competitors, I mean, let's be honest, like what it's done for us is like has accelerated our ability to enter new capability. So we can enter the coaching market really quickly
Mm-hmm.
because of some of this technology. For example, we're able to do some things around some of our products, like assessment and psychometric testing and all that stuff. Well, now we can use AI tools to kind of do some of this stuff for us, which otherwise we would have had to go build or buy or do all these various different things. So we can enter things quickly. Well, I mean, technically, the same thing can happen for other folks. So now they can enter the consumer space really quickly. And that's again what's driving our pace is we want to make sure that we continue on our career.io platform
Yep.
is the most advanced, the broadest, the largest capabilities, only focus on consumers in the market. We want to stay that way. But I guess if I had to say what really worries me the most is AI does allow you to break down barriers real quick in getting product to market in new areas that you'd otherwise would take you a while or you would certainly contemplate doing. And that could work against us as much as it can work for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's both an opportunity and a threat. And I think speed is super critical, right? Which is like
Absolutely.
newer technology comes online, and I felt this firsthand this year. Incredible number and pace of releases from both the closed source market, like OpenAI's of the world, and open source. And that's an opportunity because you could now go and build product super fast, like you're saying, coaching in a way that wasn't possible a year ago. But at the same time, it reduces the barriers of entry for every single player out there. And so you need to basically outmaneuver them and continue to kind of build more defensibility where you are versus the rest of the kind of the upstarts that come out. And I think that's the threat, right? So a new technological inflection point is both an opportunity and a threat. It's just kind of weaving that and ultimately ending up stronger than where you are today. So
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I may already know the answer to this to some extent, but I'm curious. When you look at AI, a lot of people use it as marketing material. Like now they're an AI company overnight, and their valuation potentially is higher. You certainly see that with venture-backed startups nowadays raising money. Like all of a sudden they added a .ai to their domain, or they added AI to their name, and they're trying to position as an AI company. How much hype do you think is in the broader space when it comes to AI versus what's actually real and tangible and impactful?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's hype. It's funny you say that. We own career.ai. We don't use it. It's on the shelf. Like I'm purposely not trying to just roll out AI.ai just because we have it. I think that could almost work against you at times. I think it really does matter in terms of what's real or not. I think there's a big difference. I mean, a lot of people, when I talk about some of the things that we're doing with how AI is helping us write resumes and really getting to that 80%, but it's that part with the human that really makes it unique and special. And you can actually talk about it. People are like, holy crap, that's actually doing it, right? I mean, that's actually using it, or using AI that actually reads people's resumes and writes the critique. And like, that's actually, we're doing that at a clip of 8-9 million times a year. That's what makes it real. And honestly, I don't think we should mark. So we're having a big debate even within our team right now. We've got this AI assisted draft that's on the market right now, where if you don't even have a resume, it goes back to what I was telling you before, where we'll make the right prompts. We'll ask you the right questions. You can voice it or you can type it, and we can, get you to a point where we'll give you a really, really good start of a resume for you to look at. But we'll kind of work you along the way. Well, we're using AI model behind that. Great. That's fine. But the team's like, we should market this AI assisted draft and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. My take is, I don't know if we need to do that. Like, I don't think that's important that it's marketed as AI. I mean, this is technology that's going to help you walk through a process to get you to an end. It doesn't need this big hype around it. And so we're actually A/B testing now copy on page that really tells the user it's based on AI, or it's just another way to help us write a resume for you. Yep. And we're kind of seeing how people react to that. Because my guess is that people don't care. It's about the output. It's about what the results are. And this is my point about if AI was only writing the resume on the writing service stuff, but people we were marketing it as experts, I know we'd fail because I know that if just AI did it, it wouldn't work. Um, so I lean towards not marketing hard the AI part and just making the AI deliver the results at a better, more efficient way, and you'll get the value you need from just doing that well.
Yeah. I think this is a great debate that's still going to play out for a very long time. Like you, even among the very large tech giants, Google very much leading with kind of an AI story when it comes to marketing, whereas Apple has a lot of AI as well. You almost will never see Apple talk
Yeah.
about AI, and when they do, it's machine learning. It's used very, it's a very nuanced mention to it. So I think it's a very interesting kind of thing that's playing out right now. And in some ways, I think AI, if it doesn't live up to the hype, and you see a lot of like really poor AI applications that come online,
Yeah.
AI may actually be a badge of concern that it's going to be generic, it's going to be low quality, right? So I think it could also do harm long term if it's too wrapped up in the AI story. I think what users ultimately will care about is the quality of the output, regardless of what's happening in the play.
And that's why I think our A/B testing, I think it's going to prove out that not marketing AI will be a better. We'll have more engagement up front on the non-marketed AI version, which is, by the way, all using AI, than we will with the. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I will say that the output has been better because people love the resumes that are being written, but the upfront, I bet we'll even get higher engagement. That's my guess.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And you're seeing AI in so many different forms across the organization, across Talent Inc. There are multiple models, multiple ways that AI is being integrated with the human layer. Some is self-serve, some is packaged up into a final offering. And so it's not even a monolithic single AI. It's multiple AIs. You're upgrading it over time, right? And so the whole organization all of a sudden becomes AI powered, but it doesn't have to be led with that in terms of marketing. So switching gears here a little bit, Talent Inc. is a portfolio company in the Boston Ventures portfolio, which is a private equity firm. How do you think about the AI initiatives that you're taking? Are you seeing that across the BV portfolio? Is this something that is more homegrown within Talent Inc. alone? And then, in terms of messaging for future raises or future maybe exits, let's say you go public again, how does this help in the broader story that you have?
Well, BV Investment Partners, which is the private equity firm that we own, did a really, really they do a really nice job knowledge sharing concepts. So like maybe they get our portfolio CEOs together or get various different leaders of all the different portfolio companies together and talk about topics and concepts and challenge and debate things and really get us thinking. And this was an example. This was an area where AI, they got the group together early and we had dialogue around it to kind of get us thinking about this. And so they encourage us to lean in for sure. Obviously leaning in responsibly, but they certainly encouraged us to do this. Like, for example, I came to the table with a fairly aggressive plan. I think in the context of other middle market companies like mine, this was a bunch of big bets. And they were thoughtful. And like I said, a lot of them had strong ROI components to them, couple bigger bets. But when you look at the grand scheme of everything, it's like a lot. It's a lot for a middle market business. Certainly a lot of change and transformation. There wasn't even a blink of an eye. They were like, it makes sense, and been with me the entire way throughout the journey. So from that perspective, I think they're encouraging a lot of that across the businesses where it makes sense, which I think is certainly benefiting them.
Yep. I think that makes sense. And then one of the things I really admire about what you're doing is you have very strong conviction around the technology, and you've of course made bets along the way. You've built more conviction, and then you've been able to make bigger bets. But often it's hard for business leaders, particularly because AI is so new. There is so much hype, right? They don't know what to trust versus what not to, and so they're maybe less eager to pull the trigger. So I suppose like maybe speaking to the audience, business leaders and such that we have listening to this, What's your piece of advice or recommendation of how they could potentially get started with adopting AI across their business?
Well, I will say that we haven't talked a lot about this here, but how you do it does matter too. I mean, I think the way we've partnered together around thinking about getting that prototype done, getting a viable product out there, but not finishing your own model, putting everything in there, spending all the money and the training, all that stuff. Like we really methodically got every project going that had abilities to make adjustments early, didn't lay out a ton of capital up front. It was just done in a very methodical way. Now, the trade-off is it takes a little while. Like it takes a little longer to get to your own model and making sure it's trained on your own data. Like that comes a little later, but it still is tons of gates along the way. And that is like a really smart way of doing it so that you can try and you can fail if you need to, without there being a major problem on a capital expense or, whatever you might have put into it. So that matters. I would just say the way you do it makes a huge difference. If I would go slow, I would use an open model. I would, do it in a way that it's not 100% before you roll it out. Like the thing's got to learn, build that into whatever contingencies you need to in terms of whatever it is impacting, and do it slower, more methodically, so that the cost is controlled, that the adjustments can be made. And honestly, like I didn't know we'd have 5 going on at one time. Like, and I never imagined we'd do that, but it was an easy decision to keep spinning them up because they were all individually completely under control. And like I said, any one wasn't a massive investment. And so I guess my only advice would be is to really, really do the research around how to do it as much as what to go do. Equally important in terms of your ability as a leader to kind of green light one of these things.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, Byron. And I think, the kind of approach that we take here at Multimodal is, we come from the startup world where you're building an MVP, you have to be super capital efficient, and you're also building like the leaner versions to see that you're getting impact as you imagine. And then if you do see impact, then you're doubling down on it. It's not like you have to go do a 12-month, 7-figure digital transformation. Like it's not big and meaty like that. It's much more scaled down. And then you're able to make bigger bets into it over time as you start seeing basically more proof points along the way, right? I think that's really critical.
But like, that is an approach. There is another alternative, which is I'm going to spend a lot of time and effort training this thing, building my own model, training it on all the data and everything until it's 99% perfect. And that you could go do all of that and realize it's not having the impact, or you trained it on the wrong thing, or you missed the mark for whatever reason, or the market's moved by the time you were doing that, whatever it might be. Like that, to me, again, I think a lot of leaders will lean to, let's really methodically carve this thing out and do a big project and throw a bunch of people on it and throw a date out there. Like that's, to me, is not, that's higher risk. I think the way that we've done it is, again, been unbelievably successful and allowed me to go more and more and more into it. Is I've actually been able to do more quicker because of this more methodical approach.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the space is moving so fast that a year from now, the underlying models will change, right?
Exactly.
Not everything will change. Like the data remains intact, the infrastructure remains intact, all the learnings and know-how remain intact. But over time, you're going to want to upgrade to the latest base models, the latest foundation models to do fine-tuning with and deploy with. So you have to be nimble enough and not overcommit to a particular opinionated build, because by the time you actually finish that build, it may be obsolete, right? You just have to kind of keep that in mind. So I know we're approaching the end of the hour here, but a couple of questions. I think maybe to start off with, what are you doing to learn and stay informed with everything that's happening in AI, just given how fast things are moving?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. So we talk a lot about it more within our teams. People bring different opinions of things they've read or things that they've heard or conversations they've been in. We've talked, because now we really believe we've, again, leaned in and have a lot of these models out there. As an organization, we talk about it way more. I mean, in our executive leadership team meetings, we have got sessions around this. And again, everybody kind of bringing knowledge and concepts and opinions to it. So that's just challenged all of us, which has been really cool, to be honest, like really, really cool. It's been neat. The other thing is, I don't know, I guess just reading more about it. Like, so when I read things, I'll just pay more attention. I think that I did maybe a year ago, or certainly 2 years ago, but even a year ago, where I'd be like, whatever, they're just marketing AI bullshit. But actually there's real stuff there, or there's not. And I'll then go check it out. Like my curiosity level is just way more because I consider myself in it now. So I'm now kind of wondering what all the different players are doing, whether the big ones or how companies are using some of these models. To me, I've just become more curious.
Yeah, you have skin in the game because, as you said,
Totally.
you're doing AI, so you want to stay informed. Whereas before, it felt like, okay, well, it's not something that you're doing. It may not be applicable just quite yet. So, all right, so lightning round, a couple of quick questions. What are the top 3 books that you've read or are reading this year?
Oh my goodness, The Coaching Effect. So I'm big into kind of coaching. So the coaching effects out there. Just read The Next 5 Moves, I think it's called. Your Next 5 Moves, or The Next 5 Moves. That's kind of cool. That's kind of recent stuff. I always have a shameless plug in my own book, the Sales Enablement Master Framework. So I always read that once a year. That's not true, actually.
That's great. I haven't read that yet, so it'll be on my docket. It will certainly give me more insight into how you think. Yeah.
Leading the Salesforce suit. If you are, then that's the book for you.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Let's say when you're building early stage startup, especially someone like myself, and this is true for a lot of like startup founders, they're deeply technical or they come from product. They don't have great sales backgrounds, right? So I'm having to learn a lot of go-to-market and sales just myself. And so, books like that, I think, are going to be incredibly valuable for founders like myself. So appreciate it.
I help teach different classes. And one class I always start with, I say, raise your hand if you're going to be into sales. Of course, nobody raises their hand. And then I was like, fair enough. Okay, all you investment bankers, raise your hand. And then I finally get to entrepreneurs. They raise their hand. Now the whole class has got their hands raised. I'm like, okay, welcome to sales. Right? You guys have got to pay attention because you guys ultimately need to bring ideas to the market, and that's called selling.
So. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Byron, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast. I think we dug into a lot of different themes. Will be very interesting to see what happens a year or so from now, where you have more AI, newer players, and such. But where can people find you, or more about talent? If you have a call to action, would love for our audience to hear that.
Yeah, I would just go to career.io. That's it's the brand that kind of brings everything we do into one place. It's where a lot of these AI models and all the things that we're putting in place, they also can be found. A lot of our human services too can be kind of found there too. So that's the one brand that brings all of our storefronts into one place. So just go check it out at career.io.
Okay.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah, thanks, Byron. We'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. It's been a pleasure having you, and look forward to chatting with you hopefully a year from now.
Yeah, great discussion. Thanks. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely.